ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second V-Trigger overview. I am Brian of Chamber of the Wraith, and as you know, in the last video I said that this was going to be a two-parter, and damn it, this is a two-parter. So, we're gonna dive right on in to cover the other half of the roster's V-Triggers. That's Ken and M. Bison and everybody on the right-hand side of the screen. So, buckle up, we're gonna be here for just a little while longer, and then the V-Trigger overview is done. See you soon. Ken's first V-Trigger allows him to rush forward into action, and augments all of his key special moves, his Tatsus, his Hadokens, and his Shoryukens. Now the Shoryukens get a few more hits and do more damage, the Tatsus do more damage overall, and the Fireballs are much faster and do just a bit more damage. His second V-Trigger unleashes the Shinryuken. Now you can just use it a few times just to quickly anti-air opponents, or you can use it and mash it in order to get a big rising uppercut that sucks opponents in. And you can even use the big one at the end of your combos, and then trigger a critical art to really put a flashy finish in Ken's fights. Boom! M. Bison's first V-Trigger is actually quite similar to Ken's first V-Trigger, except it augments more special moves, as M. Bison has more of them, and using these augmented special moves costs just a little bit of V-Trigger bar, just because they can be used to cancel just about anything at any time. And some of these are just ridiculous, like the hard knockdown head stomp is crazy. His second V-Trigger gives him access to two new moves, a command grab and the Psycho Crusher. The command grab infuses the opponent with Psycho Energy, which M. Bison can then detonate at his own time, except the detonation does not OTG, or he can wait for it to detonate in order to, set up really long combos that end with a bang. Quite literally in this case. Birdie's first V-Trigger augments his Bullhead and Bullhorn special moves, and I believe the flames will actually hit jumping opponents, so it acts as a half-decent anti-air. Now with these augmented Bullhead and Bullhorn moves, they add more hits, do more damage, and of course, are quite scary in of their own rights, as instead of having just one hit, there'll be 2, 3, or even 5. It's insane. Next up, we have the Birdie's second V-Trigger, which doesn't augment any of his special moves, but instead adds, mapped to the V-Trigger button, a chain pull thing, kind of like Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. Except he can it launch the opponent into the air, allowing him to potentially pull some combos off, including comboing it from about this range into his critical art, allowing him to really smash his opponent's brains into mush and grush. I don't know. Cammy's first V-Trigger is very easy to explain. It adds extra hits to Cammy's Spiral Arrow and Cannon Spike and allows them to combo into each other. Seriously, that was it. Now, Delta Drive is obviously a lot more complicated. Well, by a lot, I mean a little bit. It adds a leap that can be done up to 4 times before you run out of V-bar, and you can either drill the opponent's groin to have a combo starter, ow, or you get an overhead double kick, very similar to Nash's launching kick, that is an overhead. Vega's first V-Trigger has him throwing a rose and leaping at the opponent. This can be comboed into his critical art and several other moves, making it a very useful long-range combo starter. His second V-Trigger can be a combo starter as well, but it's a parry, and it uses up all of the V-Trigger in one fell swoop when it connects. If it doesn't connect, you get a second try before you run out. Dhalsim's first V-Trigger lays down a flaming carpet that puts a lot of potential damage on the opponent. Potential damage, which is the white damage, can be healed, but any attack that hits when the potential damage is up adds the potential damage to its normal damage, which is why that throw did so much damage. His second V-Trigger is a lot more interesting. It allows him to kind of create a hovering fireball that stays in place, and is augmented by Yoga Flame and Yoga Gale, allowing him to kind of steer where it goes. The Meter Burn Yoga Flame actually having it aimed having it actually go skywards in order to hit anti-air opponents. And combining this with the critical art that Dhalsim has, you can very quickly see why it's so difficult to get in on this guy. And that's not just with the stretchy arms and legs. Now, Fong's critical art is very dangerous because it matches his playstyle so well. The poison literally leaks from his hands, and if the opponent ever gets anywhere near him, they're poisoned. Normally the poison would go away on hit, but you usually have to be at close range to hit Fong. And if you're at close range, you're getting poisoned no matter what. Now, Fong's second V-trigger looks very strange, but what it actually does is it augments his Niskyu projectile and the poison pillar thing, allowing him to rack up a little more damage and get some different reactions and such. The puddles created by Niskyu, I think, may actually also damage the opponent, but I didn't have a lot of time to lab a lot of these V-triggers, which is why you're getting a very basic overview. I'm sorry. Necalli's V-triggers, however, are some of my favorites, and they're the only ones besides the move-based ones, like Shinryuken and Kikosho, that I know the name of by heart. The first one is called the Torrent of Power. This is one of the best V-triggers in the game to my knowledge, as it really cranks Necalli to 11, augmenting all of his special moves and giving him more combo potential and even altering his critical art to be more devastating. Oh, and it's permanent. It doesn't last forever, as in it lasts between rounds. But if in theory you had this right at the start of the match, you would be able to use it for the entire duration of the fight. And you can't really switch out of it, but why would you? Necalli's fully powered up and ready to wreck shit up. Now, his critical art normally has him, slashing the opponent like he's a dreadlocked Wolverine, but his second one turns him into a lethal, almost Shang Tsung thing with the whole Stole Steel type dealing. The second V-trigger is practically identical to the first, and it's called Eruption of Power. But it does add a new move now to the V-trigger options. It's this kind of projectile vomit thing that is +5 on block and does a little bit of damage, but it still is really nasty and very, very powerful indeed. Guile's first V-trigger allows him to augment his sonic booms, allowing him to chuck up to 5 of them downrange, and even augmenting his Sonic Hurricane critical art into the Sonic Tempest, which has more hits and does quite a bit more damage. But of course, the Sonic Tempest burns up all of the remaining V-trigger that you have on hand, so it's best to save that for last. His second V-trigger augments his Flash Kick, allowing him to hit twice with this move and perform the Double Flash, which used to be his super move in Street Fighter 4. Balrog's first critical art allows him to augment both his dash punch and dash upper, allowing him to, as long as he's holding forward and pressing to either punch or kick, to just slug the opponent from one side of the stage to the other, really racking up the damage and allowing Balrog to keep up with his slugger style of combat. It's really nasty. But his second V-trigger is potentially even worse. It's a kind of grab that has okay damage, but inflicts over 350 stun. That's enough to stun the opponent in 3 applications, no matter what they are. Urian's first V-trigger is Aegis Reflector, a wall of energy that can reflect projectiles, hence the name, but is actually mainly used as an offensive tool as it damages and hits the opponent. Using the Aegis Reflector, you can actually cage the opponents in, prevent them from jumping, or just augment your combos with boxing shenanigans and even have them bounce from wall to wall to wall, potentially. His second V-trigger is, I believe, called Tyrant Slaughter. It's an augmented version of the Chariot Tackle that you activate just by pressing the V-trigger command. And you can hold it to get 4 of them. This move also gets buffed by Urian's V-skill, but I'm not quite sure what it is. It probably just gives him armor when performing this. Now, Colleen, who is looking... she looks a lot like Elsa in that holiday costume, I gotta say. Her first V-trigger is a wave of ice that freezes the opponent's stun bar until they get hit, or until they hit you, or they're stunned. If you manage to stun the opponent, which is quite easy if you know what you're doing with Colleen, they're frozen, and they take a little bit of damage over time while they're stuck and are open to attack. Now, the second V-trigger, as far as I know, doesn't let you freeze, but I could easily be wrong. It adds a rushing slice and augments Colleen's forward dash into a sort of ice skating situation. Again, I didn't have a lot of time to lab these, I'm terribly sorry. Zeku's first V-trigger allows him access to a 6-hit combo, which I believe can end in his V-skill, allowing him to strike, then turn into either of his alternate forms. You perform all 6 hits by hitting light punch, medium punch, light kick, medium kick, heavy punch, and heavy kick. That's a lot to understand. His second V-trigger, however, allows him to launch the opponent into the air and then turn into his other form with an attack. This may be better for beginners with Zeku, because the second V-trigger the first V-trigger takes some time to get used to. Abigail's first V-trigger, however, is very straightforward and very, very dangerous. What it does is it augments all of Abigail's heavy punch attacks, allowing them to be charged, have armor, and at full power, the standing heavy punch stuns the opponent, the uppercut launches, and back heavy punch also launches the opponent really high, but can be chained into the other one for even higher launches, thus allowing you to go into critical art and turn your opponent, no matter how big or small, into a speed bag. Abigail's second V-trigger, the hybrid charge, allows him to rush forward at high speed and as far as I know, have armor on the charge when fully charged and do some sizable amounts of damage. That's it for all the V-triggers that are in Street Fighter V. Keep an eye out for more V-triggers in the future, as they will be starring in Shoryuken Saturday. And don't forget that the Ultimate Arcade Run returns February 3rd, DFTBA.